Alright, guys, and we are live here on YouTube and Twitch and all that good stuff. Thanks for joining us. This is the Pro Wrestling Rewind, or the Wrestling Rewind on nerdtoknowmedia and Phoenix 92.5 FM. So if you're in the chat, let us know what your favourite hardcore match is, because that's what we're talking about this week. Dave, welcome to the show, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Welcome to the only wrestling podcast hosted by people that don't hate wrestling.
I love that. That's the best tagline ever.
And yeah, if you're following us on YouTube and all that, do the whole, you know what to do. Subscribe, follow.
Smash that like.
Bells.
Hit that bell. We'd appreciate it. Also,
we really would, though.
Yeah, well, we have the chat here open as well, so if anyone's catching us streaming, they can kind of jump in. But this week's topic, I kind of said it offhand, Dave, and then I really was happy that we did it, because I was watching the DVD and it's my favorite period of wrestling. Not even favorite period. It's just it's such a fun time. You were texting me about it, and I'm like, you're right. It's the most fun period of wrestling there is.
You had said this to me too. It's like you're watching a totally different show.
Yeah.
Almost than the product that's presented today.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, the topic that we are discussing is the WWF Hardcore Championship. We watched the history of the WWF Hardcore Championship DVD that the WWE put out in 2016.
This is the DVD. It's really good. Thank you, Fremantle Media and WWE Home Video and Amazon for fulfill, because I had the second disc. I had the second disc twice, thanks to folks out there, but I actually bought the DVD so I could watch the first disc. So I don't feel bad about it. I feel like I've given them money now to talk about it.
You probably gave them more money than they put into creating the championship belt. Think about it that way.
To be fair, apparently, now here's the thing, I only discovered this recently. Apparently the actual belt was created, I think it was Mr. Perfect. He smashed up the old WWE belt, and that was the same one that they used over. So apparently it's from the Mr. Perfect Ultimate Warrior feud from back in the day, and they put. Yeah, I didn't realize that until I was watching Vuso's channel. I think he was talking about it, but yeah, you can see, the belt is not pretty. It's not pretty at all. It's also up here on the on the that way. That's
wherever I'm located. It's behind me. Yeah, it's not pretty.
Yeah, it's not pretty, but I love it. It's actually my favorite belt. To be honest with you, if I was in the WWE, this is the one. This is the division I would stay in.
You'd have a good chance of winning. You could be like Raven and win 39 times.
That's it. That would be my goal. If I ever get into wrestling, because I'm getting up there now, so it's probably not going to happen. But if I ever do, just be Raven. It's there you go. It's the best gimmick ever.
Hey, DDP gives hope to all of us. That doesn't matter how old you are. You can still become a wrestling legend.
This is true. DDP got in about 50, right?
He was up there, at least high 40s, yeah.
And he ended up with a bunch of title rounds, so fair play to DDP. But what I will say is the DVD itself, right, is not the best WWE DVD put out, as far as there's no story to it. It's a loose collection of matches held together by a three-way discussion between Raven, Rvd, and McFoley. Also, thank you to Monster Mutt 93 who gifted a sub to Raw Zone 1234. So thank you, Monster Mutt. That's fantastic. And yeah, that's the first thing. I was like, there's no story here. There's a bunch of matches held together by these three guys, and I really liked it. I think that structure kind of worked. I love Raven in general. I love when he's actually talking about the business from his perspective, and RVD is cool anyway. But there was a few things that was very good. There's a few things that, straight off the bat, RVD and Mick Foley have great chemistry, but one thing that really shocked me straight off the bat was Brawl for All. We talked about that on last week's show.
Yes.
Brawl for All, they bring it up, and Mick Foley's like, yeah, everyone, he provides more context to what was going on, and apparently, Bart Gunn did really well out of it at the time, and everybody, got him over. Same with Bob Holly. It got Bob Holly over, and people started, saying, oh, this guy's actually, legitimately tough, and that kind of brought in the hardcore Holly gimmick. So, the Brawl for All wasn't that bad, folks. It actually helped a lot of guys as well. So it was weird to see how all this stuff is kind of coming together as we're going, as we're looking at the past in context.
Yeah, I knew you were going to bring up Raw for Raw as soon as they mentioned it, and as soon as they said, did great things for Hardcore Holly's career, even though he was eliminated in the first round, obviously, and they seemed to get a kick out of it. The wrestlers did, so it definitely provided. This was, of course, the WWE's perspective on it, even briefly. I will say that I did appreciate. We're talking about the little 3-person segments that they had really randomly scattered throughout the DVD. No story to it. I liked
There was
when
no story
Tommy
to it.
Dreamer. No story.
No story.
But Tommy Dreamer must have been producing it.
Yes.
So they would like randomly cut back and it would go to black and white and you'd hear a voiceover from Tommy Dreamer.
Yeah.
Because I got a kick out of those moments too.
I also, there's lots of ribbon. Al Snow gets absolutely like torn apart in this, and it's just like poor Al Snow. But like, I think they did the best that they could. It was a weird choice having Raven and RVD there, until like almost near the end of it because of when they came in. But I really enjoyed seeing matches that I'd never seen before. So obviously, like, I love the hardcore division like a lot, but I would only go back and watch the pay-per-view matches because they're the ones you remember. But the fact these had like loads of SmackDown matches and Raw matches and even some like Heat matches, which I haven't seen in 20 years. So I was like, this is unbelievable. Even with the network, you just wouldn't be arsed going back. You're better off just kind of, you forget they exist. And that Hardcore Holly Bart Gunn match was actually very decent. Although I did appreciate Bart Gunn looking like the British Bulldog circa 1999 when he came back with the jeans. And it was like,
yes.
That's when you know they stop caring, when they just come out in jeans and they have no top on. They're like, yeah, I'm on my way out, guys. And then you win the hardcore belt or you start competing for it, which is what happened to both those guys.
That early period was very bizarre in certain ways to watch because it seemed a little disjointed. They didn't exactly know where they were going to go with this championship. And so when I started watching the DVD, my first reaction was, oh my gosh, this is going to take me forever to slug through because this is 7+ hours worth of matches to watch. And what became readily evident, as you were suggesting, is that as you go along further with the belt and its different phases, because you had your 24/7 phase, you had your legitimate defense phase, you see guys like Rob Van Dam, who I already have a lot of respect for, but I really gained a lot of respect for.
Yeah.
In terms of just what he would do on a nightly basis. He's almost a like a Daniel Bryan type of guy who you can put him out there and he's going to do his best to have the best match possible with anybody. And I would also say that something else that stood out to me was it put into context iconic, if you will, WWE moments that I forgot were part of the WWF Hardcore Championship. One of which being the infamous Shane McMahon, Steve Blackman SummerSlam match. I always see that clip of Shane falling, but I completely forgot it had to do with this championship.
You see, what's interesting about it is like that.
I don't even know if I saw the whole match, honestly, up until I saw this DVD. Yeah.
You see, that's the first WWE DVD I ever bought, believe it or not. And I say DVD.
SummerSlam 98 was it 98, 99?
SummerSlam 2000.
2000. Okay.
Same pay-per-view with TLC 1. And the reason why I remember is because I was 8 years old, and I got my communion money. Oh wait, I wasn't 8 years old. Sorry. I was older than that. I got it with my confirmation money, so I was 12.
2000. This must have been like 12. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, so I was 12, and I remember going into Game, which is like before GameStop, and I bought the DVD with my confirmation money. So I remember that very, very clearly. As a thing, but I also watched the VHS that I recorded and stuff a lot as well. So I really remember that whole period, and that was like Shane McMahon really getting himself over. With like, if it wasn't for the hardcore division, Shane McMahon wouldn't really have got over as much as he did, because this is when he really started moving away from being an okay in-ring guy to someone who's like, well, okay, he's gonna pull it out there. He's really gonna go for it. And we saw shades of it the year previous in SummerSlam 1998 with his match against Test, but with Steve Blackman doing these crazy spots. I think this was the first huge spot that he did, like the first, wow, this is unbelievable, how is he not dead spot. And of course it's when he gets hit with the kendo stick and he falls 20 feet off the top of the stage. And you're just like...
Or if you're Jim Ross, that must have been 75 feet up there. It's like, no, it's not that high, but it's pretty high.
But
and actually, I found Steve Blackman's elbow drop, which they usually don't show in like the little clips. I actually found that to be a bit more, I don't know why I'm using this word, bodacious than the Shane McMahon fall.
Yeah. Well, what was
took some guts.
What was interesting, right, before we move away too far, it's broken up in a 3-disc set, right? But if you have it on Blu-ray, it's 2 discs, and I have it on Blu-ray. So the first 2 discs are on 2 discs. Yeah, exactly. So it's the first 2 DVD discs are on Blu-ray. And what's interesting is it starts off with the intro of it, the legitimate title as such. Well, it wasn't really a legitimate title, but it kind of just started being defended and took off when Mick Foley was gifted it. I didn't realize it was so ingrained in storyline there. Like, The Rock shows up in a hardcore title match. The Big Bossman is wrestling Mankind, and you're like, what is this? This is crazy. It's so high up, and then obviously it drops into the mid-lower card. And then you go to, obviously, my favourite period, which is Hardcore Holly versus Al Snow. I love that period. I think it's just brilliant. And then it goes to Hardcore Holly. Goes 24/7. I want to go back to the 24/7 in a minute, and then it goes to Steve Blackman, Raven, and eventually expands out with the ECW guys, and that's when you get some fantastic matches with Rhino and the ECW guys. And then it kind of rounds out after The Undertaker gets it, and rounds out in 2002. Like, The Undertaker had this belt as well, and he had one of the best matches of all time, RVD. If you haven't seen it, buy the DVD set or watch it on the network. It's from Vengeance 2001, I think. Sorry, yeah, it is Vengeance 2001, isn't it?
Undertaker.
Yeah, Vengeance 2001.
It doesn't say.
Yeah, it's Vengeance 2001.
But nobody challenged Undertaker under the 24/7 rule.
Yeah,
well, that mess with the dead man.
That was how they got it over. That 24/7 rule never really went away, with the exception of that Steve Blackman match when Mick Foley was like, "No, you're not going to weasel your way out of it. We're gonna suspend it." But one thing I will have to say about the 24/7 rule, and obviously this was the first time it was done. It was some crazy matches, loads of interesting spots and all that kind of stuff. But even watching it again for this review, you could see it ran its course very quickly.
Yes.
And even watching it like in 2 hours, they do like 2 hours of 24/7 stuff, you get your fill of it very quick.
Oh.
And I didn't think that. Like, as a kid, I remember thinking that was great. But now watching it as an adult 20 years later, you're like, yeah, this needed to go away. I needed to change it to something else. What did you think of that? What did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought that Mick Foley, Hardy and Rvd actually encapsulated that at the very end of the DVD. Because early on, they were trying to sell it like, oh, it's crazy that we're doing this 24/7 rule, blah, blah, blah. And then they kind of admitted to each other. So how'd you feel once they got rid of that stipulation for it? And they were like, oh, it was time to go. It was just nonsense. I guess Terry Runnels winning the belt would be the best example.
Yeah, well, like
the nonsensicality of it, or the Battle Royal in which there was something like 13, 15 guys that won the belt. I don't know.
Like, I thought I'd give everyone something to do. I think everyone involved...
Yes.
It got them on TV when they wouldn't be on TV normally, and the spots that were there were very, very creative. But we've seen this again with the current 24/7 title in WWE, where it's a bit of a joke, but it's solely a joke. Like, it has no legitimacy at all. At least this hardcore title did and could be defended based on who held it. And I think the ultimate example of that is, in the space of a year, you go from joke WrestleMania to it being held by The Undertaker, and he's just killing people.
I forgot how powerful that dead man gimmick really was. And it made me even more appreciative of the Boneyard match that we got this year at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Because there was just so much more vigor and more pep in his step. He still had that, as Ross would call it, that dead man mentality of you never make more motions than you need to, blah, blah, blah. But I really like that. Seeing that side of him, coming out to Limp Bizkit, I forgot how much I love that nonsense with the motorcycle and all of that.
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun.
It was very fun. So, but it's hard now because, like you're saying, we compare it to our current incarnation, because wrestling, much like regular history, repeats itself.
Yeah,
It just inevitably
every
does.
20 years you get the same
Yeah, we
stuff
get the
repeating.
same
Yeah.
storylines. It just happens. So now we have the 24/7 belt, and I feel like it's already run its course, quite frankly. And I wonder, is it the hardcore element that made us appreciate the original concept of 24/7 more?
No, I can answer that question. It wasn't the hardcore thing that appreciate. It was the legitimacy of it,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
Like the 24. I was thinking about this when I was watching it, because immediately when I start getting bored of the 24/7 thing, I'm like, oh wow, this is really interesting. This is really something I didn't consider before, and now it makes sense, because with the current belt being a joke, you're like, well, was it ever not a joke? And the answer is no, because it
No.
was. It had no legitimacy. Like, yeah, okay, it was gifted the same way. Mick Foley said, here's the belt, and then it was kind of like scrambled out, and R-Truth's been holding it. The thing about the hardcore belt, as I said, The Rock was involved, Mankind was involved from its very beginning. It had those big name players in it. Then it kind of
Right.
went down again, but again, like, belts don't elevate people. Talent elevates belts, and this happened
Right.
even in 2001 when Chris Jericho was involved with Raven. Like, Raven had one of the best runs of the whole thing. Remember, this was one of the best WrestleMania matches as well. Raven, Kane, and Big Show from X7.
Yes.
That's a fantastic match. If you've never seen it, guys, please do.
Go back and watch it.
It's super good. It's super good, and it's one of those matches that you're just able to enjoy no matter what happens.
And you love the ending.
Oh, the
It's
ending's
just
great.
it's one of the spectacle endings that you want at a show like WrestleMania, for sure.
Exactly. One thing
I don't
that
know. I don't know why I'm teasing it as though we're giving something away. This is history.
but like,
I'm sitting here like, hey, maybe you should check this match.
well, look, you should. Here's the thing. This is, we take this for granted because we're, you know, up at the age of 30 or such. But there's people probably checking this podcast out or watching.
Don't remind
us.
me, Derek. Don't remind me.
There's people watching this podcast now or watching us live who maybe have never seen this before. They probably weren't born then. And you should go back and watch it, because if you have the network, that's what it's there for. And also, this is something that is hard to really explain outside the context. And to be fair with the DVD, even without any kind of setting, it kind of shows that evolution where you can kind of really dig into it. And my favorite kind of like matches in this is this 2000 block after WrestleMania. In the space of 3 months, you have an amazing WrestleMania match. Kane's gone against Stevie Richards and absolutely killing him. Kane's gone against Rhino. You have probably the best hardcore match of all time with Raven versus Rhino at Backlash 2001. That is my favorite match of the hardcore division. And also, it was repeated later on.
It's most mystifying, because to this day, I don't know how Rhino fit his body inside
the shopping cart.
Inside of that shopping cart. I don't know how it's possible.
Well, they redid that.
Rhino, bless him, has one of the oddest bodies that I've ever seen in life, let alone professional wrestling. Well, it's creepy.
They redid it in TNA, and during their feud, they actually redid this match.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, and it's great. Although one of the horrible calls, and one thing that I did forget that wrestling was like, the King calling matches. He says some horrible stuff, and one of the calls, some awful stuff. Out. You're like, wow, man, you're just, oh my god. But one of the worst ones in context is where Rhino gets hit in the head with, I think it's a chair or something, and like, it's a also completely unprotected chair shots throughout this.
Oh yes.
Like, the lads are just taken in the head, and you're like, whoa. But it's just like, he's like, oh, he forgot his own zip code. He's kind of drives to the wrong place when he goes home, and you're like, yeah, not good in context, King. Not good even then, probably, but different time. Very much different. Gosh. Like, again, going back to, it's a different show.
Yeah, it's a totally different show. And I'm so glad you brought up the commentary of Lawler, because that stood out to me. During the mid 2000s, we were in his like puppies phase that got annoying. but I forgot just how overly vulgar he was.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I found him much more entertaining as a personality during this time period.
Oh yeah,
because I genuinely hated him as a heel.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah, you're like, I really, really don't like you. In the sense of that's what you're supposed to be. He is a heel commentator, and he's saying some of the most horrific things you hear. And I remember we were children listening to this, and he's talking, and you're just like, whoa, this is crazy.
I hope that Jerry Lawler didn't influence my opinion of women. I'm not sure now.
Yeah, I'm just like, King, like, how were you married so many times? But then you're like, you were married so many times. And this makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's the point.
But how did he keep convincing women to go with him? It's like your opinion of him is horrific based on what you're saying and how you know. It's just, it's unreal, you know? But he does have some really funny calls at the same time when he's calling these matches, and he's running down the baby faces like 100%, like he's just burying them. But also on the commentary side of it, one thing I did like, the lads would just come down and put on a headset and call the match, and that doesn't happen nowadays either. Well, it does in the Performance Center, but it doesn't happen normally. It's a very rare thing for it to happen, and this happens all the time. The amount of times that like Road Dogg just shows up and calls the match, you're like, this is brilliant. You know, this is great. I like this. You know,
what I especially liked about it is the fact that because it was so regular, it could have just been the wrestler calling the match versus nowadays or whatever nowadays is, last year, if a wrestler's there and he's calling a match, you immediately go, okay, he's going to interfere. He's going to do something. That wasn't the case. They would just come out and have fun and commentate on matches, it seemed like.
Exactly, so,
yeah. I like that aspect.
One of the best things was from SummerSlam 1999 when Road Dogg goes out with a Roman reporter with the mic and he's calling the match as it's happening, and they're in a bar and they're in the toilet and he's like, oh, I just, and it's great. It's one of those kind of fun things, and that's what it is. Like, this whole era was so much more fun.
It was fun. It was laid back. I think there was a certain people who are historians of the WWE and wrestling in general point to this as kind of a down period almost, because the WWE gets a bit lax because we get into them acquiring WCW and ECW, so they don't really have competition, so they don't have to try as hard. But I don't really know if that's true now that I'm watching this era and I'm watching it in these segments. It's almost as though they had more freedom to experiment and do things because it wasn't, is this segment going to take away from us getting ratings against WWE and lose a war? It was, all right, let's try this. It might be terrible, but let's try this. It was almost...
Well, what we've mentioned...
It was special.
Well, what we mentioned there, Dave, we haven't really talked about the buyout yet and the change. We talked about it briefly with the hardcore and the Grand Stage match after WrestleMania X7, which is when the Attitude Era kind of died and became its own thing. But everything we've said before that happened during that competition phase, 98, 99, 2000. They were still, ECW was still a threat. Not threat, sorry, it was still a factor. WCW was still a threat.
ECW was a threat.
Well,
they were secretly being paid by WWE. But
well, here's the thing. In context...
Oh, wait. That's just a theory.
No, I'm sorry. It's a proof. Like, when you're watching it, Taz shows up and he's wearing the ECW belt and he's having a hardcore title match. And you're like, oh, come on. Like, come on. And this is not even this is around the same time period of the title belt change with Mike Awesome. Where we really start seeing what you're talking about, where the impact of ECW being gone and WCW being gone, is the next part when we start getting all these ECW guys involved in the hardcore division. So Mike Awesome shows up, which I forgot Mike Awesome showed up and had a hardcore match with Jeff Hardy.
I forgot. I always forget about Mike Awesome. No offense, Mike Awesome. Not like he's listening, but no offense if you ever listen.
Well, he's dead, so it's kind of hard to. So,
Jesus.
Yeah,
that's how much I forgot. Now he's a terrible human being.
Yeah, he's dead, so I don't think he's going to be listening to any podcast.
Oh, then all bets are off. All right.
But I forgot he was in the hardcore division. He had a really good match with Jeff Hardy in 2001. One of the best matches of 2001 is also in this period. Jeff Hardy and RVD. You're still can't get over it.
I just feel like a terrible person.
It's okay. It's fine. Like,
that was like Jerry Lawler type of commentary, and that's what we were talking about. It's that level. But I'm not going to go from laughing about being an idiot to, I know you're keeping us on track, but that is one of the things that really struck me watching this was how many people that are featured, sadly, that we now know 20 years later are
Yeah.
either dead, they can barely walk. That was something that was very apparent to me. And you mentioned the unprotected headshots. Some people would protect, but for the most part, they're very unprotected. And wow, I mean, oof.
Test took one, right, from Hardcore
Oh
Holly.
yeah,
And I'm
yes.
just like, oh my Christ, put your hands up. Please put your hands up. It's like, it still looks fine if you put your hands up,
It
and he
does.
just, and he just,
Every time Big Show took one, he would put his hands. I
and
mean, it
Taker,
just and
Taker,
Taker. Yep.
The Rock, even Austin. But yeah, Test just like, yeah, hit me in the head, and you're like, please don't.
Please don't.
It's just it's one of those things that you're glad changed, and we said that this is like a different product for better and for worse. Right, it's better
Yes.
because the lads are looking after themselves, and we're not getting these crazy unprotected shirt shots. Worse that it lost that like loose fun feel. Like this felt like a show that you could enjoy even not being a wrestling fan, which is why it did reach such a massive peak. This was culturally relevant. That's the
Yes.
thing, And this whole time period, up on you can kind of mark really when the hardcore belt went away. That's when I stopped watching wrestling, really. And I didn't realize that synced up quite well. But I've said it before. My block period is from like late 2002, 2003 into 2005, 2006. Because I just lost interest, and it's pretty much the shift in television, But as I said there with RVD and Jeff Hardy, that's the first time RVD got over to a WWE audience.
Yes.
And he had a phenomenal hardcore run. He really did.
A phenomenal hardcore one. Who was his match against? Taker, where
Yeah.
he did the dive from the concourse. I mean, that was just it put RVD on a different level. And it's funny because I guess I was 12, and because I watched wrestling more sporadically versus like a weekly commitment. Later, when I was watching it, one of the biggest feuds that stands out to me to this day was the Triple H Championship era, where he wrestled matches. RVD and Kane were a tag team.
Yeah.
And they each had single matches. It's what eventually led to the unmasking of Kane. So this must have been 2003, I guess.
2003 it was, yeah.
Yeah. So RVD had a match against Triple H in the main event of Raw. And I went, wow, this is a legitimate main eventer, Rob Van Dam. And then going back in time, I saw this match with him against, like you said, with Deadman or Raven. You're going, this guy is legitimate. So by the time you get to ECW One Night Stand, which is not connected in any way to this championship, and you see the heat that John Cena gets and the ECW vibe and all of that. I'm sorry, let me say One Night Stand 2006. He was injured from 2005. That match to this day stands up not only as one of my favorite WWE matches in terms of the match itself, but the crowd reactions that Rob Van Dam was able to get. It's just unparalleled. That's one of the things that made me really thankful for this period. Like you were saying about how, lower tier guys would get over. You would have the entire crowd chanting "We Want Head" for, for Al Snow and
that
stuff.
Was it.
That was, yeah.
This got everyone. This got all the guys involved over. Like
it was one of the things that I think Russo was gone by this period, obviously, but it's one of the things that Russo during the Attitude Era would focus on, which was, I want every character that's on television to have a storyline.
Well, it's funny you say that, Dave. Well, I'm sorry, just to click across you, he wasn't gone. Yeah. He wasn't gone by 1999, 1998. He was gone 2000. So during
so he was there for the beginning.
So he was.
That would actually make perfect sense.
Yeah.
Then, yeah.
So during all these matches, during what I've already said is my favorite period for it, all the guys had something to do. They all had characters. Yeah. This was designed for, it wasn't designed for, but it was reworked into a way to get people over using very safe, not safe working wise, but safe for crowd pleasing gimmicks, to hide stuff. So look, it's not getting over. Go out and hit each other with cookie sheets, and it'll be entertaining. And it was, and it is entertaining.
It is.
It's knowing what we know, it's kind of concerning, but still is what it is.
I always used to think that the cookie sheets getting
We're
smacked in
fake.
the head with. Well, not that they were fake, but just come on, they're cookie sheets. How much can that hurt? Even though I've been in, industrial kitchens and I know how thick those things can be. I mean, they would use a lesser quality, but still getting smacked in your head with anything. Like when there's a spot, I can't remember who was wrestling. It might have been Bradshaw, where Jericho grabbed two trash can lids and just did like back and forth swinging at his face.
Yeah, that happened a
And
lot.
I
That was
was,
Blackman move as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
Blackman would just, and I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, that's ridiculous. Second of all, never in my life, aside from on Sesame Street, have I seen these garbage cans. I don't know where they come from. I've never seen them on the street, on the curb, at a friend's house. In 30 years of life, I don't know what these type of trash cans are used for other than television. Honestly,
Other than professional wrestling, usually.
yeah, wrestling and Oscar the Grouch. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, and it's like a lot of these. It's weird when you're watching it as a kid. Your brain is doing a lot of gymnastics.
Definitely a lot of mental gymnastics.
Yeah, and you're like, oh, this isn't real. That can't hurt so much. And then you're watching it and you're like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that stop sign hurts a lot. And yeah.
There was a line Jim Ross had where he said, yeah, they teach them how to fall, but how do you fall like that?
Or how do you fall off a 10-foot ladder? You're like, yeah, that's true. There are some nasty spots in these matches. It's weird though, right? It never felt. None of these matches felt like they were
unsafe.
Yeah, they never felt like they were mean spirited, right?
No.
With the okay, for example, if you stick on the I Quit match with Mankind versus The Rock from 1999,
oh, I can't watch it.
That's horrific.
I can't bring myself to watch.
That's a horrific match. The Rock probably should have, went to jail for a bit for what he did to Mick Foley.
I mean, he wasn't New Jack.
No, it was up there, and I like The Rock. But
if you read, I know we've both read that particular book by Mick Foley where he talks about those chair shots, and apparently The Rock just went off and hit him an extra 9 times in the head,
unprotected, and his hands are handcuffed
behind
his back.
Yeah, that you're with me. That's exactly what I was going to say. That chair shot to the back of the head, unprotected.
It's horrible. It's horrible. It's like, that's what I mean, right? So that's one level that felt legitimately awful. But when you're watching these matches, they're fun. And I know it's
comical, yeah.
I know it's not even comical, but they're
sometimes
early
on they were comical.
Yeah, but
and like we were saying, then we saw the progression of introducing more high caliber. I feel bad using that word, but more high profile athletes that wanted to legitimize it. Like that's how RVD looked at it. I want to legitimize this belt.
Yeah.
And it was comical at first. I mean, come on, Crash Holly with his scale.
Crash Holly was great.
Crash Holly, for those who are unaware, essentially was the R-Truth of the late 90s.
Yes, but with more character. Everything he did kind of made sense. He had this small man complex, and he's like, hey, I only want to wrestle guys who are super heavyweights. And that's why he carried the scale around. And what I like about this is it's the missing piece. This division is the missing piece of the WWE. Like, I know when we used to do desk, Gary and myself would say we need a mid-card title, and this is what we were talking about. Not exactly this, but something that serves this purpose where it sets the table. It's the butter in your sandwich, right? Where it holds the two pieces of bread together and they meet together. And, if you don't have it, everything still kind of works, but you're going to have a dry sandwich. And WWE is a dry sandwich without one of these kind of belts, to use a very, very loose pun, right? And that's kind of what it feels like. Because, here's the thing, right? During the commentary of these matches, this is when the commentators will talk about the bigger storylines. But the guys in these matches were also somehow involved in it. And that's the thing, there's this synchronicity throughout the whole show that just isn't there now. And it's really, really annoying because you're like, how did you do it so well at this point? And now you can't even put it together with loads of writers and millions of dollars and a much more secure position. I just don't understand it.
It's kind of, but I don't know. At the same time, it makes sense, right? This is what Russo always talked about when he went to TNA, for example, and he walked in, when he came back to WWE and he walked into a writer's room with 12 people, he was like, whoa, this is never going to work. I mean, it used to be he would sit down with Vince, they would write out storylines. I don't know if it's because there's an oversaturation of the product. There's more wrestling from this one company in a week than I can watch, quite frankly.
Yeah.
I'm lucky if I catch like 3 hours worth, and that's just fast forwarding through stuff.
Yeah.
Versus at that time, everything, like you say, was woven together. It was interconnected. There were one of the things I loved about this DVD is it reminded me of storylines I'd long forgotten about. I think I actually texted you early on in the DVD. They make mention of Mark Henry having to go to sex therapy, and his revelations, which I won't get into, but his revelations that came out of that. I mean, just
but see,
that's
the
most ridiculous stuff. But at least he gave a character to guys that currently, what are they doing? They're just running around.
They're just guys.
You know, at least there's a storyline.
They're just guys.
They have purpose.
You know, but that's the thing, right? Like watching all these, right? Pick one at random. I'm looking at the match card here. I'm going to pick one at random, and I'll probably be able to tell you the context. X-Pac from July 2000, right, on a random SmackDown match. This fed into his feud with Steve Blackman and his personal rivalry with Road Dogg. They were able to get that over outside of a match, and it kept you going. Also, by the way, always wanted that hockey D-Generation X hockey jersey.
Oh yeah,
I just always wanted it. I'm like, this is great, and it's gone. Please bring it back so I can buy it. I didn't have.
Bring back everything else, WWE.
Yeah, I didn't have $80 when I was 10 or 12. You know, now I do. So you know,
we can afford it.
We can afford it now. We have adult money.
With adult money, we don't have our kids yet. So
yeah, exactly. So we're good for the next couple of years, and then
we don't have to buy them replicas of these belts.
You know, here's the thing: they never actually did a hardcore replica belt, and I don't know why they didn't. Like
I've seen fan made, if you want to call them that, ones listed on eBay, but no, as far as I know, there's no official one.
I think they missed it. I think they missed the boat on this. Like, to be honest with you, I think it's just one of those things where it's a license to make money because people are going to buy it. Like people like us. I wouldn't. I'm not a replica belt kind of person. I wouldn't buy one, but I would buy a hardcore belt because it's cool. You know, like legit. But it wouldn't be my thing to go out and buy a belt. But
I don't know if I would buy it.
You know, it's just look. It's as I said. It's just one of those kind of things that even if you're not a wrestling fan and someone walks in and like, what the hell is that? You're like, well, let's watch this DVD, and then they never come back over again. So
there's very few wrestling things that I buy.
Yeah.
Just to have like memorabilia wise, and I think this gives away my fandom some. Like one of them is like
you disappeared. It's gone.
Much like his tag team partners, it disappeared. Like I have, WWE 2K19, I bought as a physical copy, not as a digital copy.
Right. I have one too. It's over there.
AJ. Yeah. And I don't know where he is right now, but I keep two things on my desk with me. And one of them is a Tony Romo Christmas ornament because I'm a big Cowboys fan. Means nothing to you in Ireland.
Nothing.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
Nothing. Not at all.
Not
we
one
can
thing.
Talk about Lionel Messi later or whatever. Chelsea. I don't know.
Fair.
Relation. And the other is I have a little figurine of AJ Styles.
Oh wow.
Like, those are the only two things that I keep on my desk.
Have you met AJ Styles?
Have I met him? I've been within 10 feet of him. I don't think I've ever.
Oh, that's weird.
I don't think I've ever gotten a picture with him or seen him.
Because I know you've met like pretty much everybody, dude, in the indie scene. You're just like random pictures. Like, oh, there's Dave with like Ricochet and Tommy Dreamer and just like everybody. It's crazy. No, I've met AJ before in TNA a bunch of times. Just because it's TNA and you could just meet everybody. But yeah, it's cool.
When I went to a TNA house show back when TNA could afford to do house shows, and maybe AJ wasn't on the. Maybe something was up and AJ didn't come out because I have a picture with Earl Hebner from that.
Oh really? Yeah,
like Kazarian and Curryman with Christopher Daniels. So yeah, and AJ I'd obviously get. So I don't know. The only person I didn't get a picture with was Kurt Angle. And that's because he wanted $20 for a picture and everybody else was giving them out for free.
Yeah, like, no. No, the best one is let's go off topic. When Jeff Hardy was...
we are off topic. We're talking about getting pictures. We're off topic.
But when Jeff Hardy was going through his legal problems before, like, somehow he was able to get, like, travel visas to come over to Europe. And then the 1 year he wasn't. They like, wrote it off the injury. But I still have the poster over there of, Sting has replaced him. And I was just like, this is brilliant. I need this. So I took the actual, like, proper. I'll post it up on our Instagram later and our Facebook so you can guys have a look. But
I'd love to see that. Yeah, please do.
man, it's super good. It's my favorite bit of wrestling memorabilia I own is that poster because I think it's just the funniest thing ever. Trying to work everybody, but everybody knew what was going on. It was just like, this is ridiculous.
That was one of the things because Jeff Hardy was involved in a couple of these feuds, and it reminded me why so many people are huge fans of Jeff Hardy.
Oh yeah,
because he's a phenomenal worker. But at the
unreal.
same time, I'm watching these matches. I'm like, this is not a good period in this dude's life.
No, but see again, even in his TNA stuff, man, his TNA career was all this. And this is before he had the championship. This is like when he was fired from WWE 2003, 2005. And he was having really good matches in TNA, but the guy was a train wreck. He
did try and come into that dome. That didn't go so well.
Oh man, that was like 2011, the Butthole of Doom.
Remember his big debut that on the Monday Night.
The Monday Night Wars, yeah. Oh man, that was great. Again, one thing I miss in WrestleView is being able to go back and listen to Hunter Golden's rant on that. Fantastic stuff.
See, my role at that time, my character was defending TNA, so put yourself in my shoes.
Well, I actually was defending TNA at that point, like legitimately, and it was very difficult. So it was hard, But what I will say is, for anyone who hasn't seen this DVD, right, or is unfamiliar with this time period, it's one that kind of gets lost. And what I mean by that is the star powers of this were huge. The Rock was by 2000, The Rock and Triple H were carrying the company because Austin was out. And
was that the Austin holdout period?
No, this one Austin was injured.
Okay.
He didn't come back until Unforgiven 2000 because I got neck surgery.
Right.
But like The Rock, Taker, and Triple H were carrying the company basically. So it's very easy to forget that there was all this massive undercard doing these great things. And it's why these shows were so good, and it's why the ratings were what they were, because it provided more than just one match. It provided more than just one segment that everybody liked. You could sit down and watch an entire episode of SmackDown and not feel bored. You could I know it was 2 hours. SmackDown was an hour at one point, and it was extended to 2 hours, same with Raw. But it wasn't.
But Raw was only 2 hours.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, I know that's something that's hard to remember in this post. Oh my gosh, when did they move it? 2013, 2014?
2014.
But oh my gosh, Raw was so much better because it was more concise.
It was so tight, and just everyone felt like they were doing something. Everything felt like it was worthwhile. And when you're going back and watching it, it's kind of sad because you're like, I'm not going to get this again. When I watch Raw on Monday, I'm going to be sad, or tonight because we're taping this on Monday. I'm going to be like, oh, jeez, it's going to be... And it's not just because... Like, the crowd reaction as well. The crowds in this, man.
Oh, yes.
Oh, my God. Like, look, I'm sorry. Wrestling without crowds is kind of weird. But the crowds in WWE audience nowadays kind of suck compared to these crowds. These crowds were part of the show, with their signs and their chants. And, it was a totally different atmosphere. Again, like, what happened? These people grew up with it and they just stopped doing it.
I think... it was the whole shift in the wrestling mindset of, wrestling sports entertainment. It's not wrestling, honestly, is I think what caused the shift in the crowd reaction. I think fans now, because we went through this period in the mid 2000s where you wanted to know what was going to happen. SmackDown was pre-taped, so you wanted to go to your favorite wrestling site and print out the results so you could tell your friends and spoil it for them so they couldn't enjoy it at home that night. Like, that was just the mindset. Like, I don't know when the term was officially coined of like a smart, your smart mark, which is ridiculous. We're all marks, no matter how smart you are. Even wrestlers are marks for themselves.
Of course, they're usually the big. They're usually the biggest marks for themselves. Come on, let's be real.
And you got to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that some of the best wrestlers that there've ever been have been the biggest marks for themselves.
Dude, Dark Side of the Ring. We talked about it last week.
Right.
Last week's one with the slap heard around the world. That was literally because Dr. D is a massive mark for himself. Please don't kill me, Dr. D. But he's a huge mark for himself. It's just the way it is.
A huge mark for himself. I'm glad you brought that up because I did watch that and I didn't know if we were going to get to it. We can touch on it for a couple minutes. One of the things quick recap, people who didn't see it. John Stossel, I mistakenly said Geraldo Rivera last week. I was thinking Benoit stuff. John Stossel was doing these exposés, went to wrestling, specifically WWE, got a guy who told him some secrets. Then he went up to Dave Schultz, which is a terrible idea. But even though Vince is the one who sent Schultz out there, and he asks him the question you should never ask, which, is this real? Or not? And so Schultz slaps him in the face once, and then slaps him in the face twice, and then Stossel says he has like tinnitus or hearing problems for years. I don't know, whatever. But it just goes into how you buy into your gimmick, and how Schultz was on screen and off screen a guy who believed in kayfabe. When he started in wrestling and was being trained, they didn't even smarten him up right away and let him know wrestling's fake. They had him, because that's what they did. I mean, you can go to Hulk Hogan. With Hulk Hogan initially went to be trained to be a wrestler, they broke his arm in one of the stretch sessions. So, I mean, that's how far they would take people to kind of keep the business secure, if you will. So for somebody to go pompously in there and try and do an expose when that's your livelihood, and this, I don't think an entertainment product is the same as selling vitamin supplements, and claiming that they're going to give you new brain powers. So I don't know. I just that period, that time, that dark side really shocked me. But what shocked me more is some of the fan reaction to it. I don't know if you followed any of it on Twitter.
No.
People are saying, oh, it's horrendous. He was basically blacklisted from the WWE. No, he wasn't. WWE gave him tons of opportunities. He had tons of opportunities to work in places like Japan and all of this. He could have kept going. That was on him.
He wanted to be a bounty hunter. Making more money that way. Yeah. I think with him, the business kind of changed, and he didn't change with it. Because 2 years later, Vince came out and said, "Hey, it's all fake," and he's just like, "Oh, well, there you go," And it's like, the thing about it is, I don't.
That clip was so weird to watch.
Yeah, I don't watch. Look, I don't watch wrestling because I think it's real.
Oh.
I don't know anyone who does, and if you do, one, I don't think you listen to this show. But
spoiler.
But I'm like, you're in for a bad time, man. It's like, it's an entertainment. It's like anything else. It's like watching a good TV show, and like wrestling hasn't been that in a while, actually, with the exception of WrestleMania. But what we're talking about, this is your TV show. This is like the best series of the TV show. Yeah. It's all just there for you. And that's what I mean. But, and look, and what I'm meant to say is, if wrestling had have stayed the way it was under the kayfabe time, we wouldn't have got stuff like that.
No, we wouldn't, because they would have been too hokey for people to believe. Because I think it was Dark Side of the Ring where they said during that time period, about a third of the audience, I don't know if it's true or not, but they claimed that about a third of the audience still thought that wrestling was real during that time period. So maybe that also could have gone into the crowd reactions that we were talking about earlier. I mean, maybe there was more of a connection to them. I remember I was working in college. I was working at a theme park and like doing like the games, and like that nonsense. You play like the water games and basketball shooting games. And the only shirts that I would see for wrestling, this was like 2008, were like Jeff Hardy shirts from the Attitude Era or from this period. There was something about him that just connected to your blue collar worker.
But I think everyone connected to it. Like, think about it, at this time period, NWO shirts were. I remember going over to going over to the States, man, and like we never had NWO shirts over here during the time. During the time period. Because you couldn't. WCW didn't really have that much of an impact here. But I remember going to Florida and NWO shirts were everywhere. Everywhere. Austin shirts were everywhere. Jeff Hardy shirts were everywhere. Undertaker shirts were everywhere. And,
that Austin 316 shirt.
Yeah, as you said, this was, 2003, 2004 when I was over there. So, again, they weren't new shirts. They were shirts from that time period.
Wash shirts, probably.
Well, probably. I didn't see any.
I don't think he had a signature one.
I didn't see any, but it was crazy. And I think again, wrestling was a thing. Wrestling was a mainstream, impactful thing where everyone knew what it was. Even to this day, you say wrestling, people are going to name The Rock, Undertaker, probably Mick Foley, but definitely Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then Hulk Hogan, James Haystack, all the kind of stuff. They're going to know those people. They're not going to know who Danny O'Brien is. They're not going to know who who's the champion now. Your man, big guy. These hands.
Big guy.
I can't remember his name.
Braun Strowman's my guy. He's my guy.
No.
Okay. Yeah, my favorite wrestler is like AJ Styles. But no, Braun Strowman's my guy. Okay, yeah. I will admit I popped when he won the tag team championship at WrestleMania with the kid. I thought that was fantastic. Like, I liked the comedy and stuff like that. I mean, to value the belt.
No, I was sorry. I was using a colloquial Irish phrase there, Dave. Your man being for the person.
Okay.
Not your specific guy. Not your specific guy. Okay. But that's a colloquialism. Sure. But yeah, no.
Sure, Derek. Blame on your culture. Whatever.
No, Braun Strowman. Like, that's what I mean. Like, you wouldn't know these guys. You know, if you just go up to some randomer, they're going to be like, "Who's that?" And that's just one thing that we lost. You know, but look. To wrap things up, Dave, because we are hardly getting to the hour, and it's I can't believe that this flies by. It's crazy.
So much that we want to. That's why we kind of jump all over with our topics. Maybe I'll start writing outlines or something because there's so much to cover.
We will start doing it. We'll start doing it next week. We're going to talk about Money in the Bank because it's the wrap up to Money in the Bank. It just happened, so we'll have watched it and we'll talk about our top Money in the Bank topics, wins, and what all that kind of stuff happened. Guys, if you want to get involved, do. nerdtoknowmedia@gmail.com. We're really active on Twitter, really active on Facebook now again. So
I'll respond to any of your comments that you put under our YouTube video.
Oh, so yeah, Dave's all over that.
If you want to put questions,
Dave's all over that.
Questions that you have for Money in the Bank, etc.
Definitely, and then we'll be able to go. But obviously, if you want to catch us live, we stream at the same time every week, 1 p.m. Eastern or 6 p.m. British time. And so Dave, is there anything you want to plug before we wrap this up, sir?
Just my fan, and it's starting to get warm here.
No worries. Okay, guys, if you want to check out our show, go over to nerdtoknowmedia.com. All the details are there. Nerdtoknowmedia on YouTube, Nerdtoknowmedia on Twitch, all that good stuff. Until next week, this has been the Pro Wrestling Rewind. We will talk to you